Hey guys, it's Vance here, and today I'm going to be reading a book about Mother Angelica. Alright, the introduction. The folks around Huntsville, Alabama called it that nun deal, the palace, or the shrine, depending on whom you talk to. I would trek out there most Saturday mornings. Veering off Interstate 65, past cattle drowsing in the Alabama heat, I turned right at Pitt's Grocery, and raced by a row of newly built homes, concrete saints peering at me from their well-tended front gardens. Unlike the occupants of the RVs and air-conditioned tour buses on all sides, I was less interested in Our Lady of the Angels Monastery than in the woman who built it. During the final approach to the mammoth stone-faced edifice Mother Angelica called home, I would silently review the questions I intended to put to her. This would be my last chance to prepare for the 5-hour encounter that lay ahead, a sit-down interview with the world's most outspoken contemplative. Since cloistered nuns are forbidden direct contact with the outside world, our interactions were restricted to the community parlor, a plain room with all wall of metal lattice work separating nun from visitor. On the surface, discussing the intimate details of one's life through bars would seem counterproductive, but in our case, the arrangement lent the proceedings a confessional air. It was as if the black-laced metal grille between us liberated the 79-year-old abbess, allowing her to revisit the past with an honesty and candor she could not permit herself otherwise. She would arrive, ready to talk. "Hey, Payson," Mother Angelica squawked as she entered the parlor on the other side of the grate. She paused in the doorway, her arms open as if making a stage entrance. A quick warmth overtook the spare rose-tiled room. Caught in the flow of a chocolatey Franciscan habit, all 5'5" of her appeared amazingly young and lithe this day. Her rounded cheeks spilled over the sides of the wimple, like a pink pillow crammed into a shoebox. The downturned smile, cherished by millions, pinched her eyes into slits of piercing gray. Even though she was a good 45 minutes late, no explanation was offered. Mother Angelica lived in the present moment. "Well, let's get to it," she announced, as if I were the overdue party. Glimmers of affection and mischief danced behind her glasses as she sidled close to the bars, offering her hands through the grate. Once she took hold of me, she cut to the important stuff. "How about some lunch?" "What we got, sister?" Mother asked over her shoulder. The ever-attentive Sister Antoinette dashed off to the kitchen to check the cloister bill of fare. Later, over half-eaten cookies and milky tea, a napkin tucked between her chin, Mother put aside her well-crafted personal anecdotes, perfected over a 20-year career of unscripted television, and began revealing parts of her past no one, including her sisters, had ever heard before. Whether it was fate or just good timing, I caught Mother Angelica during a reflective moment in her life. She had just realized a long-sought goal, the completion of a new multi-million-dollar monastery. She seemed genuinely content, finally ready to look back on all she had survived and accomplished. Seated in an overstuffed leather chair, she struggled with memory and time to unearth the truth. "Do you sense a split in yourself? In your personality?" I asked her this day. Whenever Mother Angelica emitted a long, almost bothered sigh, repositioning her body in the chair, as she did then, I knew a revelatory moment was upon us. Shooting a finger inside the starched white wimple that surrounded her face, she rubbed her temple as if she were physically trying to loosen the past from her memory. How often I would sit there waiting, staring past the metal florist dotting the grill, thinking how much they were like Mother Angelica, like Mother herself, steely yet feminine, guarded yet open, forged by fire and lasting. Then the answers would come. Did I ever tell you about throwing the knife at my uncle? I want the real me to be known, because nothing I have or do is me. It's some street woman that got sick and was given many things. Then with slow precision, she added, the real me is not what you see. In the grated parlor of her cloister, for the better part of 3 years, I pursued the real Mother Angelica. From 1999 to the end of 2001, the woman Time magazine called the superstar of religious broadcasting and easily one of the most powerful and influential people in the Roman Catholic Church met me for a weekly date of sorts to resurrect the past and appraise her life. These visits were brave exercises for Mother Angelica. It is one thing to permit a neophyte to rifle through your history. He is disadvantaged from the outset and knows only what the printed record affords. But I had known Mother personally and as an employee for 5 years when I began interviewing her. I had been near her in good times and bad, in public and in private. For 2 years, I occasionally co-hosted her popular Mother Angelica live TV program and served as news director for the network she had founded. In some ways, she was like a grandmother to me, a grandmother with whom I shared an uncommon ease and kinship. Our mutual Italian heritage probably helped. We could converse about any issue and did not avoid the occasional ribbing. We had words once, Mother confided to a friend in my presence. Raymond didn't get to use any of them. Despite differences and disagreements, we remained close. My peculiar vantage point allowed me to see Mother Angelica as she truly was, a simple, deeply spiritual woman struggling to do God's will and to overcome her personal failings. I slowly began to recognize the other Mother Angelica encased within the cherubic face beyond the metal bars, Rita Rizzo, the sickly girl who, with only a high school diploma, had fought her way out of poverty and single-handedly created the Eternal Word television network, EWTN, the largest religious broadcasting empire in the world, succeeding where all the bishops of the United States and several millionaires had failed. Here was a modern Teresa of Avila, an outspoken firebrand who, with a radical faith and determination, had surmounted obstacles that would have hobbled most men. She had beaten back sexism, bankruptcy, and corporate and ecclesial takeover attempts in order to provide moral leadership to the people. Physically, this suffering servant had endured a mystical dance of pain and providence that would exact a terrific price and yield astounding rewards. The woman John Paul II declared weak in body, but strong in spirit, publicly challenged cardinals and bishops in the name of orthodoxy, broadcast a common-sense traditional vision of the Church in the post-Vatican II period, and became an ecumenical spiritual beacon to millions. Still, she remains a mystery, even to her legions of followers. How did this neglected, withdrawn child of divorce rise to become one of the most reverend and feared women in Catholicism? How did a cloistered nun with no broadcast experience conquer the airwaves? How did stomach ailments, shattered vertebrae, an enlarged heart, chronic asthma, paralysis, and twisted limbs actually further her mission? What fueled her well-known public battles with church hierarchy over practice and devotion? How has her television network and religious order managed to thrive while others have collapsed? And most important, how is her message being received in the Catholic Church today? And what impact will it have on the future? These nagging questions and my familiarity with bits of her hidden story convinced me that a full-scale biography of Mother Angelica was needed and timely. With trepidation, I approached the woman herself, fully realizing her participation would probably be minimal due to the continuing demands of her network and the responsibilities of running a religious community. Angelica's reaction was typical and immediate. Why not begin and see what happens? As she had undertaken every major initiative of her life, trusting in God's providence, she embarked on this most evasive project with total commitment. We decided it was not to be an authorized biography and that editorial control and interpretation would be mine alone. True to form, Mother allowed me complete journalistic freedom. She would make herself available for extended interviews on weekends or after her live show, usually for several hours, as time permitted. No question would be off limits, no topic too sensitive. Fully cooperating with my research, Mother Angelica granted me unfettered access to her community archives, personal correspondence, friends, physicians, and the sisters of Our Lady of the Angels Monastery. The community historian, Sister Mary Antoinette, became my greatest ally, patiently answering questions, providing crucial information, and suffering calls morning, noon, and night. And then, just weeks after we had completed the final interview for this biography and our last live show together, Mother Angelica was felled by a debilitating stroke. It robbed her of speech and sealed her memory, rendering it unlikely that Mother Angelica will ever grant another interview, and certainly none with the depth, duration, or intimacy of those I conducted. Without my knowing it, I was recording the final testament of Mother Angelica, the last word of her remarkable life. One evening, before shooting her live show, she gave me but one instruction, which has haunted me to this day. Make sure you present the real me. There is nothing worse than a book that sugarcoats the truth and ducks the humanity of the person. I wish you 40 years in purgatory if you do that. Hoping to steer clear of that ignoble end, I have written a book that does not avoid controversy or the seeming contradictions inherent in Mother Angelica's character, the cloistered, contemplative nun who speaks to the world, the independent rule breaker who is derided as a rigid conservative, the wisecracking comedian who suffers near constant pain, the poor Claire nun who runs a multi-million-dollar corporation. Herein are the remembrances of friend and foe alike, any and all I could find who had crossed her path. Criticisms of Mother Angelica are also unblinkingly considered here, as is her prodigious broadcast output and its development. To properly appraise a life like Mother's, backward glances are necessary. Only by looking back can we see the twist of fate and grace that shaped this most unlikely life. Like the rest of us, nothing happened for Mother Angelica in a flash. Hers is a tale of mostly painful, confused, and to the outsider, lunatic steps leading to a satisfying end. But the inspiration of her story resides in the struggle, a struggle that has for the most part been concealed or lost over time. During the last 5 years, I have retraced her temporal and spiritual life from Canton, Ohio to Huntsville, Alabama, unearthed people and stories Mother had long forgotten, weighed her gifts and failings, and discovered a faith rare in our day. I believe this mosaic constitutes the most complete picture of Mother Angelica, from inside and out. In April 2001, after a particularly grueling interview session, Mother began to withdraw softly into the recesses of her cloister. Then, on the threshold, she spun around like a coy young girl, slapping a hand on the rounded doorframe. "You now know as much about me as God does," she said with a wry smile, "but there are some things even you will never know." You don't mind if I keep trying, do you?" I asked. She cackled gaily, retreating into the hall. What follows are her candid memories, the fruits of my research, and some things neither Mother Angelica nor I ever expected to uncover. Raymond Arroyo, New Orleans, 2005. To be continued.